Welcome back to a Thanksgiving week edition of Preps Today with John Millea. Today we're going to let John give us his fall sports and activities review. And John always has great memories. As you know, if you listen to the show, John goes all over the state finding the best stories from Minnesota sports, high school activities, and sports. And it's really cool when we get to do a show like this where we get to kind of reflect on all the stuff John has done, all the traveling he's done. So let's get to that here on Preps Today with John Millea. John, of course, MSHSL.org. You can find his written work there at John's Journal, his spoken word artistry here. We're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios, and we want to thank our sponsor, Pizza Barn in Princeton, Jody Stay's fine operation, not far out of the metro. If you're ever up in the Northwest Quadrant, just head up there. The pizza is great. The atmosphere is great. The people are great. We highly recommend it. If you like this show, please subscribe to your favorite podcast app. Free, easiest way to listen. And spread the word if you do like the show. We're proud of the show. We want a lot of people to hear it. So, John, start us off with your fall review.
Yeah, Jim, it's interesting. This is really my last fall. I'm going to be retiring from the Minnesota State High School League next summer, so I'm kind of ticking things off the box here. And in the midst of all of that, I kind of lose that fact because I'm just working, I'm driving, I'm writing, I'm interviewing, I'm talking to people, having all kinds of fun. But I'll get home and my wife will say, "So, that was the last state volleyball tournament." I said, "Hey, I guess it was." Although I'm not going away. I'll still be around. I may have my finger in some of this. I just won't be a full-time member of the high school league staff. But yeah, this has been a great fall, Jim. And I've talked to old timers much older than me about, comparing the weather this fall to anything anybody's ever experienced. And this is number one. I mean, we just have had very few nights for football or soccer, whatever it is outdoors, that it wasn't great. And the weather is one thing, but it's you can't always count on that. But for me, I can always count on having fun. And as has been the case in this job from the start, it's the people I get to meet and talk to and write about and call friends that makes my job special. Here's a great example of that. So the Hills Beaver Creek was playing in the state football semifinals, and then they've also played in the Prep Bowl. I'm walking around the field at US Bank Stadium as the game prior to that one is finishing, and I hear somebody call my name. "Hey, John." And I look over. It's a high school girl from Hills Beaver Creek named Bryn Bakken, who I wrote about in the spring. She's one of the top track athletes in Minnesota. Is already, I think she's a sophomore in high school, and she's already got a collection of state track meet medals. But I spent time with her at a track meet in Worthington last spring, and she saw me walking around, and boy, we had a nice chat. I forced her to take a selfie with me just so I can. I'm collecting a photo gallery on my phone of all the cool people I get to hang out with. I tell people all the time, "Okay, freeze right there. I'm going to get a selfie of us," because I'm putting this photo album together. So Bryn from Hills Beaver Creek, she's in my photo album, and that's just the things I get to do are so great. So let's go. Just going to revisit some of my favorite stories I've been able to do from the fall. This one's number one, and I've heard so many people have mentioned this one to me. The Hancock football team playing their first home game in 2 years. They played every game on the road last year because their home field was always flooded, and they decided to rip it up and put in irrigation and drainage. And it's great now, but I was there in September for their first home football game in 2 years, and it was super special. We had Chad Christensen, the Hancock football coach, on the podcast the week after that. Just a phenomenal experience for me. And it was Dad's Night, which they do every year. So the fathers of the players come to a classroom about 4:30 or 4:45, and Chad's up at the whiteboard. He's showing video. He's giving them a scouting report on what they might see from the opponent. And then after that, and just probably the coolest thing I've ever seen on the high school level, the dads walk down the school hallway to the locker room. And the tradition is the boys are in there and they got their pads on, except for their shoulder pads and jerseys and helmets. So the dads are strapping the shoulder pads on their sons, pulling the jerseys down over their shoulders. And then there's, some of the dads and coaches give brief speeches. There were hugs, there were tears. One of the most powerful things I've ever seen. I'll never forget it. So I can't thank Chad and everybody in Hancock enough for their hospitality while I was there. It was really a neat small town thing. And another small town story, we had Eric Hermanson on the podcast. He's the football coach and the band director at Cleveland High School, which is, I mean, I've never heard of that combination before. And they're very successful in both. About 70%, about 75% of the kids at that high school are in band. They have basically not only statewide, but a national reputation, especially for incredible jazz band performances. That was really a memorable thing. I went to Waterville, Elige, and Morristown for a volleyball match, which I wrote about after the match. There was a ceremony honoring the team manager, photographer, cheerleader, Mitch Tegmeyer. He's done a lot of different roles for the volleyball and softball teams for a long time. I think he's 30. This started when he was in high school. Crystal Lamont is the volleyball and softball coach at Waterville. Mitch was one of her students in her developmental adapted physical education classes. Seeing those two hug it out at the end of this ceremony was really cool. So way to go, everybody in Waterville. And in kind of a continuing story, for the second year in a row, I went to a football game at Park High School in Cottage Grove to check in on their use of Guardian caps. You know, we're seeing more NFL players wear those. Last year I wrote about Park High School. They were the only high school football team in the country that had every player wear a Guardian cap for every practice and every game. I've talked to the Guardian cap people last year and this year. There's a few other high schools in the country doing that, but Park High School and good old Cottage Grove, Minnesota, they're leading the pack. They're on the cutting edge of player safety and concussion prevention. So way to go, Wolfpack. I wrote about Grant Fitterer, a cross-country runner from Tri-City United who works part-time in a restaurant. He absolutely saved the life of a coworker who had a medical emergency while sitting in his car during a break. His coworker was passed out. The car is on fire. And Grant, a Boy Scout, good training, I'm sure, got this guy out of the car, saved his life. And Grant has been recognized nationally for his heroism, which is certainly appropriate. One of the absolute best days I had this fall, Jim, was at a football game down in Byron. Holy Family was the visiting team. Byron has a new school, a great new stadium. I think this is the second year for the stadium. I'd heard a lot about it, but I was still blown away. People often ask me about my favorite places to watch football games, and I have two now, Byron and Forest Lake. Forest Lakes, they redid theirs a few years ago, just first-class operation. So on this night at Byron, with Holy Family being the visiting team, our friend Casey O'Brien, he was at the game. His dad is Dan, is the Holy Family coach. Casey is the volunteer assistant. The O'Briens are about the finest people, I know. And Casey is well known, unfortunately, for all his time battling cancer. He was a holder on kicks for the Gophers. He has done so much to raise so much money and awareness. And I enjoyed seeing Casey that night. And of course, we all wish him great health. Just a couple more here, Jim, to wrap up the fall. I wrote about during the state volleyball tournament, the toughest volleyball player in Minnesota. That's from West Central area, a senior named Maya Fosslin. She played maybe more than half of the volleyball season, including the state tournament, with a broken hand. She's right-handed. She smacks the volleyball with the right hand, and there's a busted bone in there. I'm still amazed at that one. That's one. And finally, I'll close out this part of the show before we talk about the Pizza Barn. This was fairly recent. I wrote about Kira Friedrich, a junior at St. Peter High School, who was named first-team All-State in two sports, soccer and cross-country. Two first-team All-State selections in the same season. And I think just last week we talked about this, maybe 2 weeks ago. I've put out the word. Has anybody ever seen this done before? And I don't know of any others. So, and by the way, Kira was also inducted into the National Honor Society this fall. So she had a very memorable autumn.
That's fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Reminder, we're coming from the Aquarius Home Services studio. Reminder, we have Randy Shaver's High School Football Show, which is doing great on both YouTube and at talknorth.com. Reminder, subscribe to the shows you like. We have John Millea, Jeff Diamond, Don Mitchell, Randy Shaver, Mike Grimm, John Krasinski, Kevin Gorg, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, Roy Smalley, Lavelle Neal. It's amazing how many good people we get to work with. So check it out. You're going to find something you like at the network. We also want to thank the primary sponsor on this program, Jody Stay's Pizza Barn in Princeton.
Yeah, it's almost December, but if you hustle, you can still get into the Pizza Barn, get the November pizza of the month, the loaded beer cheese. It starts with the beer cheese base, then they add the good stuff: andouille sausage, freshly shredded mixed cheese, bacon crumbles. After it's baked, they top it with popcorn, and they have pretzel bites that can be added for a small additional fee. You can get that loaded beer cheese pizza for dine-in, carry-out, or delivery. And we can't forget the fantastic lunch buffet Monday through Friday from 11:30 to 1:30 at the Pizza Barn. You're guaranteed to find a whole bunch of delicious options every day. I'm a big buffet guy. Just take a look at me. You can tell. And yeah, you're right, Jim. Thanks to our great friend Jody Stay for sponsoring our podcast for years and years, and everybody who works on the crew at the Pizza Barn. They're phenomenal. You'll never be disappointed. They're right in downtown Princeton, easy to find. Have a great time at the Pizza Barn.
Yes, please do. All right, what do you want to do now? You want to look ahead a little bit?
Yeah, winter sports are coming here next week. We'll talk about the Prep Bowl, but yeah, it's your basketballs, your wrestlings, your hockeys. It's busy. For me, once we get past the Prep Bowl, I ramp it down a little bit in December. I'll be my wife and I'll be visiting our grandkids in California for a first stretch. And once we get past New Year's, then it's time to ramp it up and make that long charge through the winter state tournaments in March. But let's wish everybody a good Thanksgiving this week and happy holiday season, and we'll see everybody soon.
Yes, great stuff, John. I appreciate it. Enjoy the Thanksgiving week, and we'll talk soon. And looking forward to what might be your last winter as a writer and podcaster, although we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how things play out.
That's right.